this afternoon. And we certainly appreciate the discussion yesterday during our budget workshop and look forward to finalizing our FY18 expenditure plan in May. Also just want to note that the department certainly feels we had a great retreat with the commission in March, and we so appreciate that discussion. And as a result, you saw changes as quickly as yesterday in the budget presentation that reflect a commitment to take care of what we have in the way of infrastructure and public trust resources, to reduce what is spent on new capital improvements and focus on a land conservation approach that enhances partnerships and connects our urban citizenry with our precious outdoors, and ensures budgeted amounts are much more tightly aligned with actual expenditures. Now, as the Commission knows, we are in a time of transition as we presented the proposed FY18 expenditure plan yesterday, in the midst of reevaluating activities and processes and priorities, and how we allocate resources towards those priorities while still delivering conservation to our citizenry every day. The timing of the budget workshop and the FY18 expenditure plan development makes it seem a bit like, I think I said this yesterday, renovating a house that's still being lived in. We have workers in the house that are making some changes, but life continues in the house as well, including getting the family fed, clothed, and off to work. So we appreciate just your patience as we are making the changes internally. And this transition includes our lean efforts, and that includes a new position, Assistant to the Director for Operational Excellence. It includes clarifying priorities internally and also externally in one way that we're going to engage the public in their opinions about budgeting template and format ready for the FY19 budget process. So we certainly appreciate the patience as these changes are being made and for the support of the Commission, and we look forward to discussions today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sarah. Next on our agenda, Sarah Kinder. Welcome. Wow.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Director Pauling, and Ms. Maples. My name is Sarah Kendrick. I'm the new state ornithologist following my friend and birding mentor, Brad Jacobs, in this role for the department. It's my privilege this afternoon to recognize Brad Jacobs, retired state ornithologist, for the recent honor of being named the recipient of the Partners in Flight Lifetime Achievement Award. Partners in Flight is a network of over 150 partner organizations in the Western Hemisphere dedicated to all aspects of land bird conservation, from science, research, planning, education, and policy. Partners in Flight, or PIF, collaborates to develop monitoring and assessment tools and uses research and science to develop priority species lists and conservation plans for cooperation across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Partners in Flight recognizes exceptional contributions to the field of land bird conservation. The PIF Lifetime Achievement Award honors an individual who has contributed over the whole of their career to advancing PIF bird conservation efforts through leadership, investigations, public awareness, and/or stewardship activities. Brad Jacobs was selected for his commitment to education and advancing the work of PIF in the Midwest, nationally, and internationally. Brad has devoted his career to bird conservation. Though he loved birdwatching from a young age of 10 and studied birds for over 50 years, his major accomplishments occurred while he worked here for the Conservation Department starting in 1987. For the sake of time, I will focus on Brad's accomplishments as part of PIF, otherwise we may be here all day, as Brad's influence in the bird community is far-reaching. Brad is an active member of PIF from its founding in 1990. He was one of the founding members of the PIF Midwest Working Group, and he was on the National PIF Steering Committee until his retirement last year. Brad is also a founding board member of the Audubon Society of Missouri and the Columbia Audubon Society. Internationally, Brad's leadership and vision were critical in the creation of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, or AFWA's, Southern Wings program. Southern Wings is a partnership of state agencies that support a common vision of providing a funding mechanism for bird conservation efforts in Mexico, Central and South America. Southern Wings focuses on conservation efforts south of our border to support priority birds through their annual cycle while protecting the investments of participating states. Long-distance migrants that we may consider our Missouri birds often spend up to 8 months of the year south of our border. Brad emphasized the needs for conservation work on the wintering grounds and supported and cultivated partnership efforts in relevant countries that are key to the species that breed in Missouri. Brad, with the support of then Division Chief Dave Erickson, pitched the idea for Southern Wings to AFWA, and it took off. Started in 2009, Southern Wings has grown to 29 participating states. Brad was nominated for this prestigious award by Paul McKenzie of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, here today, with the support of natural resource colleagues in multiple partner agencies and organizations, further demonstrating that Brad excels at partnerships for bird conservation, both foreign and domestic. Brad is the 5th recipient of the PIF Lifetime Achievement Award. He was able to receive the award in person at the North American Fish and Wildlife Conference in Spokane, Washington in March. Please help me to congratulate Brad Jacobs for this esteemed honor and thank him for a long and bird-friendly career.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Commissioners, Director Holly, Ms. Nichols. I'm here today to present a brief update of communication efforts at the department. The department strives to share our conservation mission with Missourians through a variety of communication channels and venues. Our goal is to encourage people to get outside and discover nature while at the same time gaining an appreciation for conserving Missouri's fish, forest, and wildlife resources, and to help cultivate a conservation ethic by promoting the relevance and importance of these resources. To do this, our communications team provides multiple opportunities for people to connect with the department. And so at this time, I'd like to touch briefly on some of these various communication tools utilized to help tell our story. Beginning in February of this year, we began to live stream commission meetings. At our first meeting, we had 99 live viewers, 21 watched the recording. Just to give a little insight, 72% of those watching it were from desktop, 22% from mobile, and 6% from tablet. And really what this is just telling us is people are using a variety of different ways to access the live streaming. Social media continues to be a very important medium for us to connect with our audience. On Twitter in the last 12 months, we've had a 19% growth of those following us. For YouTube, 23%, and Instagram, 53%. This is because we continue to really push these channels and let people know that they can access and watch us from them. And on Facebook, it continues to be one of our most powerful ways to connect with Missourians. In the last about 16 months, we've had a 19% increase. And what I really want to talk about on Facebook is our engagement. Just this week alone, we had over 165,000 Facebook users engage with us. That means they liked our posts, they shared, they posted, they engaged with the department. And then that translates to a reach of 580,000 Facebook users. So again, that's our overall exposure. So when those 165,000 people engage with us, then they engaged with their audience as well, their friends, their families, those that follow them. And that is the power of social media. It really creates that community that people are talking to one another, sharing stories, either sometimes supporting the department, sometimes questioning what we do, but we have the opportunity to really have those discussions. And it's also the primary way we are gaining new followers, that word of mouth and recommendation. The communication team also with Facebook Live continue to get out and about the state promoting conservation with Facebook Live, which is a new tool where basically we can go and do live. And Lucas Bond is one that does that a lot. In fact, this morning he was in a helicopter showing our research with the Canada geese population. We've also done mushroom hunting recently. This allows our staff to tell that story. And there's been also some great feedback and conservation-related questions on our page. In addition, we've been working with other divisions, especially, for example, protection. And we've had the ability to show Operation Game Thief. Lately, we did paddlefish eggs and timber theft. And again, just to kind of show you that connection, not too long ago, we did one where we had a poaching case on a bear that we found a carcass, our agents did. It was skinned and had no paws. We put this on our Facebook, really enraged our community. They were really frustrated that somebody would do this to our resources, and it really had that opportunity for us to have an touch point. Not only that, so much media follows our Facebook that in Springfield, that resulted in a story from something that was going on in Jefferson County, and then we were able to really even reach more folks. So again, that just kind of shows that power of social media. About July 2015, we started offering texting for our nature centers and ranges. This allows folks who want to get information pushed to them to learn more about what's going on at their facility to connect. That graph right there just shows you the 15-month subscriber growth for those that first started off with us. But I want to point out we now have 10 facilities that are using our texting, and we have almost 11,000 subscribers across all locations, and we continue to see those numbers grow as well. Email communication. MDC continues to promote keeping in touch on conservation topics of interest through our email subscription service. Through our website, people can sign up to get regular communications via email or text on key conservation topics that interest them. We continue to grow the number of email addresses in the system each month due to promotion at events, nature centers, our magazine, and through press releases we'll remind folks. So our subscribers since August of 2016 have grown 40%, and that's unique individuals. Our subscriptions has grown by 61%. Now, a person can subscribe to more than one thing. They might be interested in deer management. They might be interested in statewide news releases. Or they could sign up for something that's just more local in their areas of St. Louis or Kansas City, for example. We don't want to forget, though, our employees as well. So we have been doing an electronic employee newsletter to reach our employees to make sure they know key topics that are happening with the department. We've also started with Director Polly doing live employee webcasts. It's an opportunity to engage with staff and let them ask questions about key department topics. So while the department utilizes this robust network of free communication tools such as news releases, websites, and social media, research has shown that combining your free efforts with paid marketing can greatly increase your communication reach. So I'd like to now take the time to go over a few of our paid marketing efforts we do to help raise awareness of the department and to reach. So right here are some print marketing efforts. For example, we work with River Hills Traveler, which has a large subscription base south of the Missouri River. It's a monthly guide to hunting, fishing, camping, kayaking, canoeing, traveling, and more in the Ozarks. And that's an example of an ad that we've used in multiple places to help grow and alert people of our MDC apps. We also have partnered with the Outdoor Guide, which is a bi-monthly magazine that features fishing, hunting, boating, camping, and outdoor travel information. And just to kind of, again, correlate, when we do this ad, we will see a bump in our app downloads. And currently right now for Mo Hunting, we sit at about 240,000 installs. And our Mo Fishing, which has been live since July 2016, 32,000. Our MoCon magazine, our app, which is more for the phone, the Android device, we're about 7,000. And that's a little bit different than our Flipbook, which we offer, and that sits about 25,000 that are accessing our magazine that way. We also do some focused urban marketing efforts. These are 3 examples that we have: the Springfield Cardinals, St. Louis Muni, and Mizzou Sports. So again, the idea of our urban marketing efforts for these 3 examples is we're trying to create awareness. And the way that we measure these is how many impressions, which is a very much of an industry standard. So for example, Springfield Cardinals, we reach approximately 500,000 people. They have around 5,200 that attend each game, and we're reaching fans not only around the Springfield area, but research has shown some come from Kansas City as well. The Muni, we have 400,000 attendees annually for that. And not only do we have that, we also get that NBC staff for on-site face-to-face, so we can really draw in the attention. For example, in the St. Louis Muni, the stage has trees that come through the stage, and literally trees work with the Muni and the actors. And so we have partnered with forestry, and we're looking at that again to really promote trees and how they can help conservation. And then with Mizzou Sports, they have average view of their broadcasts, which were with their radio, of 628,000, and that's primarily Missourians at all their research shows. And with Mizzou Sports, it's not only the football game, but we have baseball, we have softball, we have soccer, we have basketball. And so again, it's our way to raise awareness, and we really track those impressions that we're getting and work with our vendors to make sure that we are reaching our intended audience. I also just want to touch briefly on our digital marketing initiative. Leveraging the power of mobile messaging to reach new conservationists who might not know our agency through our traditional communications channels or get it in those other types of marketing. An increasing number of people use mobile devices exclusively. In fact, you might know or might not, but some people don't even use desktop computers anymore. And you can pretty much guess it's the younger generation that opt for their mobile devices over their desktop computers. And in fact, most people want that mobile device to find information. So we've been able to do very specific targeted digital marketing. And those are 3 examples. Powder Valley for the 25th anniversary, trying to create awareness. And what's cool about digital marketing is we can get so much to where we pinpoint a 25-mile radius around Powder Valley, and that's who we want to reach. I don't want to reach the folks that have a phone number that maybe has an area code, for example, of Kansas or Nebraska, but they're living, they're no longer living in and around Powder Valley. I want to get the people that are there, and we can do that with digital marketing. And then we track it and measure it by how many impressions. And I'm happy to say in all 3 of these we use video, because video works for folks. People like and remember what they see. And so we had an average for all 3 of these over 85% views of our 15-second video, and we had a click-through rate of about 20 to 22%. That's much higher than the industry average. So we're going to continue to look at these and measure them and make sure they help drive people to what we want. And finally, I just wanted to point on some of the expansion of online that we're doing. Our education portal for teachers is currently in beta testing with a group of teachers, and we're planning on making any necessary enhancements based on feedback from this group over the summer, and the final portal will be live in August of 2017. Again, this is a way to build a community of teachers and our education consultants to talk about what's working for them at our Discover Nature Schools program. We're very proud that that program is in 100% of school districts. And it's our way to really help teachers understand what it is they can do with the program. What is someone doing that's really cool and get their kids excited and outdoors? And our research portal will be live in June of 2017. It's a way to share department research with the public. We're working with other divisions to get their information and their research on the site. So I'll highlight current research activities, provide access for the public to these projects, hopefully grow interest in the department and science careers, and finally provide that contact in case people have more information. So that's just a really brief view of some of the work we're doing for communications, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, John. Very exciting. Commissioner Bedell, any comments or questions?
No questions, but comment. Very nice job. Thank you, Joe.
Commissioner Blair?
Yeah, enjoyed the presentation, Joni. I want to circle back to, you say you measure the success of these programs by impressions. I don't know if I understand what impressions mean and how do impressions convert to purchasing hunting permits or fishing permits or visiting conservation centers. And so I'd like a little bit more clarity on how you quantify that success, if you could.
Sure. So impressions on those particular campaigns that I was showing, our call to action, if you will, it was awareness. Awareness is probably one of the hardest things in the industry to really measure. So we use impressions, and that means how many people saw our ad, how many people potentially interacted with it, that's a click-through rate. When we have a video, we can tell if you actually watched the video or not. We can even tell if you watched the video for 2 seconds, for 5 seconds, or did you watch the whole 15 seconds. Which ultimately, that's what we want. We want that whole video watched. And just to take it a step further, to help us out, to make sure we're on top of our game, we did a side-by-side comparison. Would somebody watch a 15-second video where we feel like you can get a little bit more information in, or are they going to watch a 30-second video? Overwhelmingly, people watched the 15-second video. They were willing to give us 15 seconds of their time, which I know doesn't sound like a lot. That was huge to me, that I had someone for 15 seconds, their attention. And so if we're doing an awareness campaign, because part of what we look at for the department is people have to know who we are. And there are folks that get confused with their city parks, with Department of Natural Resources. So we want them to know that we're helping the Fish Forest and Wildlife Resources. So for an awareness campaign, for impressions, we're trying to see how many people actually watch it. Now, for permit sales, that goes to a call to action. If we're trying to specifically push someone to buy a permit, then we're gonna have a different type of campaign. We're working really closely, in fact, with Permit Services and Nathan Best on some email campaigns, and we're actively engaged on that kind of, can we send out an email and remind people, hey, you ever bought a permit in a couple, maybe a year or two, click here, purchase it, and we'll track that. So again, it really looks at what are we trying to accomplish, and we look at each campaign on what we're trying to accomplish.
Any more Pokemon Run conservation?
We still have a Pokemon, and that's a great example, and I'm glad you brought that up. That happened at that very moment, and I'm really proud of our staff that we were able to capitalize that within 4 days of when that phase went out there. It's kind of waned off. I mean, virtual reality is still there and still something that people are interested in. We're definitely looking at opportunities, but that's an example of we're there, we hit on that social, it's kind of waned, people aren't quite as excited. So we look to some of our younger team members to help us out, make sure we're staying on top and giving folks what they want. But that's why I like to highlight some of those social media tools and email. Research shows, to be honest, across all generations, people like email, they open them. And I think people like email because they can just sit in that email box and you can get to it when you want. And so that's really why we use a variety of communication channels. And press releases still work too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Bradford?
Yes, a brief question, Joni. You're talking about the awareness campaign and you gave some examples here. Do you have any percentages of what part of your budget you decide to put towards awareness versus, say, digital marketing, or as you cited, call to action?
Sure, yeah, we look at overall for our awareness, for the muni, for example, that's 4% of our budget, so it's a very small percent. So for awareness, we try to right now do it in thirds, because again, we're trying to get people to know who we are, what we do, and why it matters. And while we've got powerful tools at our disposal, our magazine, for example, reaching over 500,000 Missourians, we also know it's not reaching a certain subsegment. That's why I really like that digital marketing, that honestly is targeted towards those millennials. And while we did that awareness, we had some anecdotal, for example, when I talked to Powder Valley staff, they saw an increase in people using the trail system. Now, we didn't see as much increase going through the door, because we can count bodies, but we don't count the number of people on trails. That particular campaign, we were targeted mothers, ages between 25 and 38. We wanted them to have a great place to get out there, get on our trails, enjoy it. Hopefully, maybe they had to use the bathroom to go inside, and then our staff takes over. When they have that opportunity to interact, and they can start answering those questions and really feed that curiosity. So right now, it's about a third. Third awareness, a third that we're gonna work on trying to increase permit sales. But we also like to, counterbalance it with some of the free things that I feel like we do really, really well. And that social media, it's all free for us, and we just try to capitalize on it.
So how do you adjust those? I mean, you make a decision that, well, maybe that didn't work so well, like maybe the Pokemon thing wasn't, it was
Yeah.
just a flash in the pan.
That's a great question. So we always get together as a team. Right now, our team meets once a week to go over and look at the measurements. After a campaign's done, we also always have an after-action review. So for example, just talking about the videos, we really weren't sure would 15 or 30-second work better. So by doing that side-by-side comparison, that feeds us that information saying, okay, we need to put a little bit more emphasis on that 15-second video. The other thing I didn't mention on the campaign is we also did some static ads. How did static ads do versus video? How did desktop do versus doing mobile, which we can do all that. And again, we learned actually mobile won more and video more than static. So then we can adjust when we work with outside vendors. We do work with marketing firms that are on statewide contracts to help us actually do all the placements and help with the metrics.
So we have that flexibility when we don't get locked into a contract that says we're gonna pay whatever.
We have been in the past, but yeah, we've been working very carefully with like our legal counsel and when we look at contracts to make sure we aren't locked in for the future.
Everything moves so quickly in this area of what you do, and and I would hate for us to get stuck in something that's not really productive, so.
Absolutely.
Nice to know we have some flexibility. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jody. Exciting news. In fact, your chair was so excited, I got ahead of myself on the agenda, and you've got some important actions to get considered now from the consent calendar. The following items are on our consent calendar for consideration and approval now, and these are things that we generally believe we have a consensus on. We're going to try to approve these collectively. There's the minutes of our February 16, 17 meeting, the minutes of our March 21st and 22nd meeting, the information technology project status report, recommendation for approval to suspend or revoke hunting, fishing, and trapping privileges of individuals for cause, and the same recommendation for those in compliance with applicable child support laws not in compliance, and also for those in terms that are in accordance with the terms of the Interstate Wildlife Violator Compact. At the same time, we want to reinstate privileges for 4 individuals. Lucas Hughes from Buffalo, Missouri, Barry Hughes from Lewisburg, Missouri, Seth Tucker from Moberly, Missouri, Ronald Boyd from Farmington, Missouri. Are there any of these that the commission would like to address outside of a collective approval?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to pull March 21st, 22nd meetings to table for further discussion.
All right. And we have a motion to pull them off the consent calendar and the additional motion to table. Is there a second to that motion to pull it off the consent calendar?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Okay. Those in favor of the motion is made, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries, so the other ones are approved. And this one is pulled to the table for the time being. Now let's move on to the next item that is on the agenda in the right place here. And this will be for our regulations report. Director.
Happy Arbor Day, Commissioners, Director Pauly and Rhonda. Next few minutes, I'll go through the Regulations Committee report, and we do have presentations. The Regulations Committee met on March 16, 2017 to consider recommendations to establish regulations for the 2017-2018 migratory bird hunting seasons. During that meeting, and as the first order of business, the committee heard from a Mr. Nicholas Perkins of Cameron, who identified himself as an avid waterfowl hunter. Mr. Perkins shared his concerns regarding habitat loss and resulting declines in waterfowl populations in southern states, and he offered suggestions that he believes will ensure a similar scenario does not occur here in Missouri. His visit was timely because the presentation by resource scientists Andy Radicke and Doreen Mingle provided to Nick insights into the department's process used to formulate recommendations for waterfowl season dates and limits. Commissioners, as you know, the department's schedule for setting migratory bird hunting regulations is governed by a timeline established by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Changes to that timeline implemented in 2016 allow the department to better serve our citizens by announcing waterfowl regulations much earlier than in previous years. At this time, Mr. Chairman and Commission, I would like to introduce both resource scientists Andy Radicke and Doreen Mingle. They will provide an overview of recommendations for the 2017-2018 migratory bird seasons. And again, I would note that this is the first year that season dates and zone boundary formulas approved by the Commission in 2016 will be implemented. And with that, it's a great pleasure to introduce some of our premier resource scientists, Doreen and Andy. Welcome.
Welcome, Doreen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Director Pauly, Ms. Maples. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to present the 2017-2018 migratory game bird season recommendations. So what I'll cover today is a brief review of our regulation schedule, and then offer our season recommendations for webless migratory game birds in the September teal season. So, as you know, each year the federal frameworks are set up for annually to consider season lengths, bag limits, and then the earliest date and the latest date that seasons can open and close. So states can schedule their seasons anywhere within those opening and closing dates. And we could be more conservative if we wanted to, but we cannot be more liberal. And again, as Deputy Director Draper just mentioned, as you recall, this year is the second year of the new regulatory process that combined the old early and late season process into one, and our regulations now are based upon the previous year's information. One of the glitches we have experienced with this first year of going through this process is the federal frameworks are published in a series of federal registers. And the proposed season framework was supposed to be posted in December 10th, 2016 Federal Register. But it actually did not get published until February 9th of 2017. And this is the one that has the 30-day comment period. So the final season frameworks were supposed to be published by the end of February, and they've not yet been published. And so we're offering our recommendations based upon the proposed season frameworks. And it would be really, really unusual for the proposed season to be different from the final frameworks. But just to make you aware that is going on, the Fish and Wildlife Service has indicated that we should proceed. And if for some reason there is some difference, we would have the opportunity to adjust to that difference. But it basically was a situation because it's changing administration and just some issues that we don't foresee happening in the future. So in terms of webless migratory game birds, this includes the two rails, Soar and Virginia rail, the Wilson's or common snipe, the American woodcock, dove, and then we put coots into this group. They're kind of not really webbed and not really webless, but they seem to fit best here. So to deal with doves first, this includes mourning doves, Eurasian collared doves, and white-winged doves. And again, the collared dove is an invasive species. It's not covered under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and so states can deal with it as they would like. And the reason it's included in this group is because it looks so similar to a mourning dove that it could be difficult to pull them apart on the wing. And so the idea is also to somewhat protect the mourning dove population. If there was no season on Eurasian collared doves, a person were dove hunting and got their limit of mourning doves and wanted to keep hunting collared doves, it would keep them from inadvertently shooting the wrong bird. And also, the collared doves are pretty much confined to suburban and urban areas, and thus far have not exhibited competition necessarily with the mourning doves. So it's something we'll keep an eye on, but for now it seems to work to keep them in this group of birds. So Missouri is within the Central Management Unit, and the harvest management strategy for that unit calls for a standard or moderate season option. And the federal frameworks then is a 90-day season between September 1st and January 15th, with an aggregate daily bag limit and possession limits of 15 and 45 respectively. So our recommendation for the dove season is one that opens on September 1st, closes on November 29th, has a 15 bird daily bag limit and a 45 bird possession limit. And then the shooting hours are 1.5 hours before sunrise to sunset.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? I'm confused. Is it the federal framework and guidelines, or is it on Eurasian mourning and white-winged doves that's an aggregate total of 15, or is it our guideline? Because I'm hearing it's an invasive species, and
Since we've included it in that group, it falls under the 1545. If it was not, it could be considered almost like starlings, that if it's causing you issues, you could take them.
it seems like we're going about it backwards. I just struggle to understand. If you're out mourning dove hunting, or, typical dove season,
Right.
and you bag a Eurasian dove that's easy to identify, why does that need to count in your daily total of 15? Is that a federal requirement that we have to abide by, or why would we be that restrictive?
The idea would be that if you were out there doing that and you harvested 15 mourning doves and thought, well, I kind of like shooting Eurasian collared doves, I'm going to keep on. If you inadvertently misidentify them while they're flying and shoot a mourning dove, you're now over your limit and you're out of, you're illegal. And so it's to try to prevent that from happening. So basically, when you shoot 15 doves, you're done. It's,
I think, yeah, and for my input or my perspective, I think that we let fear of somebody making a mistake get in the way of, I mean, where I live and hunt, there's a lot of them because it's closer to a suburban
Right.
area, and they're pretty easy to tell, and if you got a pile of 5 or 6 of those, you know, why shouldn't I be able to continue hunting when I've got 15 mourning doves I'm done? I mean, it seems like we're making the rule to
So you would
protect
like-
against the potential outcome that might happen, as opposed to making the rule
right.
to facilitate, let's hammer an invasive species.
Right, so you would like a consideration to remove Eurasian collared dove from this group of birds in this setting.
Okay.
All right.
That's how it has to be worded. I would just like us to look at things from the perspective of not assuming people are gonna make a mistake, or, you know, that they're gonna risk putting themselves in a violation. You're saying that the hunter is, when they've got 15 birds, they're gonna take a risk. Well, I think I know what that is,
Right.
and they're gonna take that risk, and you're trying to take that risk or prevent them from inadvertently making a mistake. I think you're thinking for people, and we should allow people to think for themselves and let them say, yeah, I'm not that good at identifying, I got 15 birds, I'm done. But if they've got 5 or 6 Eurasian doves, they should know that doesn't count in their limit, and let them have their fun. That's how I would encourage us to look at things. And I think the public would like that.
All right. Point
But
two.
I'd like to give every hunter a can of white paint too, so they can paint the feathers on the birds they shoot.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on
I
to
think the real
rails.
question, though, that I don't know has yet been answered is this a federal guideline to include them as a
That's how I started my
selected total,
question.
or is it a state decision?
Yeah, and honestly, I don't deal with those that often, but it's my understanding it's a state decision to
Right.
include the Eurasian collared dove. It's not a federal one at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
Okay. In terms of soar and Virginia rail, that's a 7-day season that we recommend from September 1st to November 9th with a 25 daily bird bag limit and a 75 bird possession limit. That's aggregate of the 2 species. And just a little bit of information, we recently had a couple of marsh bird projects that have finished up in the state that were cooperatively conducted between Resource Science and Wildlife Division. And one of the outcomes was migration chronology of soar rail. And these birds show up in the state almost like clockwork the second week of August. Their numbers peak about the third, fourth week of September, and then they're pretty well out of the state by the early November. So our season dates pretty well bracket those peak numbers in the state. In terms of the Wilsons or common snipe, we recommend a 107-day season that runs from September 1st to December 16th, with an 8-bird daily bag limit and 24-bird possession limit. And then for American woodcock, that's a 45-day season, and we recommend that run from October 15th to November 28th with a 3-bird daily bag limit and a 9-bird possession limit. And then for coots, their season dates will be the same, the recommended season dates will be the same as ducks, and Andy will go over that here in a few minutes, with a daily bag limit of 15 and a possession limit of 45. In terms of falconry seasons, we have about 150 active falconers in the state. And for doves, the federal framework allows 107 days between September 1st and March 10th for falcons with possession limits of 3 and 9. 3 daily bag limit and 9 possession limit. And we recommend a season date that runs from the 1st of September to the 16th of December, again with a 3-bird daily bag limit and 9-bird possession limit. And that would include any ducks, coots, or mergansers that falconers would also take. And those hours would be 1/2 hour before sunrise to sunset.
Does the mergansers regulation include ruddy ducks?
No.
Virginia, I didn't know.
And Andy will get to those here in a few minutes as well. So are there any other questions about the webless game birds? Okay, so moving on to the special September teal season recommendation. There are three possibilities for teal season and it's based upon the breeding population index of blue-winged teal. So if the blue-winged teal population breeding index is less than 3.3 million, it would be a closed season. If the population index is equal to or greater than 3.3 million but less than 4.7 million, it would be a 9-day season. And if the population is greater than or equal to 4.7 million, it's a 16-day season. So based upon the 2016 population index of 6.7 million, we have a 16-day season available to us this year. And the federal frameworks allow those 16 days to occur anywhere between the 1st of September and the 30th of September, with a 6-bird daily bag limit and 18-bird possession limit. So we recommend that the teal season open the first Saturday after Labor Day. The reason for that is so it avoids any potential conflicts with other recreational uses taking place over the Labor Day weekend. And also, the further we go into the month, the more other species start showing up. And so it just kind of avoids incidental take of other waterfowl species. And also, the way the calendar falls this year, this is as late as we can structure the season and still get 3 weekends of teal season hunting opportunity. So our recommendation is that teal season run from September 9th through 24th with the same daily bag and possession limits as last year, the 6 and 18, and then the shooting hours for this season is sunrise to sunset.
You don't spell out the bag limit though. You're saying the same as last year.
Yeah, sorry, it was earlier, it's the 6 birds daily and 18
Thank you.
possession. Yep. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you, Doreen.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Pauling, Ms. Maples, wonderful to be celebrating Arbor Day with you. I hope you've had a chance to look at the wood ducks that are starting to use those trees, take advantage of nesting. It's a really neat opportunity to see them out there. With that, anyway, I'd like to talk about the 2017 waterfowl recommendations. And to do so, what I'd like to do first is provide a little bit of recap of what happened this last year, and then get into some of the recommendations in the background for both ducks and geese. So it's kind of unusual getting used to making our recommendations on the previous year's data. So in doing so, let's take a look at what happened in 2016. First, I'd like to show you what the May ponds and the breeding grounds look like. And you'll see, basically, they're still pretty good. They're similar to the long-term average, but you will note the last 3 years, they've kind of been on a little bit of a decline. If you look at the breeding population in 2016, it's amazing. We're still at near record duck populations. It's just unbelievable to think that we would still be there. If you look then at each individual species of ducks, I'd like to show you a comparison of duck numbers by species from 2015 to 2016, and then versus the long-term average. So if you look at mallards, for example, you can see they're basically the same as 2015, but 51% above the long-term average. Again, it's really nice to be able to present that kind of information. If you look at other species, then you can see across the board, they're pretty much above the long-term average. You'll notice 2 exceptions. Blue and teal last year were down a little bit, but they're still 34% above the long-term average. Pintail continue to be a concern. They, for a number of years, have been well below the long-term average. So now looking at Missouri, if you think about this season, going into last season, the table was set. We had unbelievable moist soil. Things were looking really good. If you look at the season, our areas really held record numbers of what we call duck use days. It's basically the number of ducks for the length of time they're here. It's a common metric to monitor duck numbers during the wintering seasons and the migration. And so duck numbers are really good. If there's any duck hunters in the audience or up on stage, you would probably say, well, that's not the entire story. And so I want to get into that. If you look at harvest, this is the only information we have right now is a harvest on our areas. And I really want to thank Wildlife Division and all the effort that our wetland managers go through to provide information, collect information from hunters about their harvest. And based on that, you can see our harvest overall was down from what it's been in recent years. If you compare it to the late 90s and early 2000s, it's still pretty good, but again, not what it was, compared to 5 years ago. if you look at the daily average, the number of ducks a hunter shoots per trip, you can see last year was about as low as it's been in the last 10 years. And so the question is, well, why did we have a season like that? And there's a couple things I want to draw attention to. One, if you go up in Canada, where it all starts, late last fall, they had well, not late for them, in mid-October, they had a large snowstorm and lots of rain. And so after that, subsequently, you had lots of habitat like this. In much of Canada, they don't combine directly the small grains. They first swath it and then combine it. So you have small grain that's unharvested, put in nice feed rows for the ducks, add water, and you can imagine that's a pretty nice situation for them. Talking to people in Canada, the ducks stayed in Canada till mid-November, even when the conditions were still extremely mild, lots of food. At that point, they decided, well, it's time to migrate, even though they didn't need to have to. So you can imagine ducks that were in great body condition, they migrate into Missouri, and what do they get when they get into Missouri? They get super mild conditions. You're setting records in November, temperatures in the 60s and 70s. You've migrated, not very challenged physically. You come into Missouri, where are you going to spend your time? In the refuge where you're not getting harassed by hunters, or going out and getting shot at? It was tough hunting in November. You move into December, we had a brief cold snap where a lot of things froze up, but then things turned very mild. The other thing we had was very dry conditions. Oftentimes, ducks, in terms of an evolutionary perspective, when you have wet conditions, that's a cue that it's time to go out, pioneer, look for places to forage. They take advantage of those new floodwaters. Dry conditions, that's not the type of condition where a duck, when they're comfortable sitting in a refuge, would think, oh, there's really a good reason to go out and forage and expect to find new food. And so you put all those things together, and in Missouri, it was just flat out tough hunting this year compared to many years. And I'm sure many of you heard from hunters that were talking about that as the season progressed. Now, the great thing about hunting is even if one year wasn't good, we always have the next year to look forward to. So I'd like with that to turn our attention to what we might expect and look for in the 2015 season. Just to remind you, when we set waterfowl duck regulations, we do so based on primarily mallards, and it's called the Adaptive Harvest Management Program. Based on that, we have three options other than a closed season that we might have. One would be a restrictive season, a moderate season, or a liberal season with 60 days. The wonderful thing is we've had 20 years of liberal seasons. If you look at this year, we're again expecting, well, we will be having a liberal season. If you look at the mid-continent mallard numbers, we're at 11.8 million mallards, which is, again, 51% above the long-term average. If you look at the May ponds, we were at 3.5 million May ponds, which is pretty close to the long-term average. So just as a point of comparison, last year the conditions were a little wetter, but the duck numbers were the same. So this will be our 21st year of the liberal season. Now, when we start thinking about the duck season dates and zone boundary for this year, as Deputy Director mentioned, last spring, after an extensive public review process, you all had approved a couple of changes to zone boundaries. You moved the north zone boundary up a little bit to provide more late season hunting in the Missouri River Valley, and then you moved the south zone boundary up in the western part of the state. And at the same time, you had also approved season date formulas based on that public input. And with the 60-day season, that was in the north zone to open on the first Saturday in November, in the middle zone to open on the Saturday nearest November 6th, for 7 days, close for 5 days, and then reopen for the remaining 53 days. And the south zone to open on Thanksgiving for 4 days, close however long we need, so we can have the remainder days get us to the end of the federal frameworks. So if we would stick with that this year, you would be looking at a duck season that would start on November 4th in the north zone. The middle zone would actually start on that same day, but then be closed for a period of 5 days before it reopens. And then the south zone would open again, like on Thanksgiving Day, which is the 23rd this year, and then open back up for that second split on December 4th.
Daniel, why do you propose that in the middle zone? If I could ask you what you.
Oh, yes, absolutely, that split season.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, a lot of that goes back to the public input. We heard two things. One, in the north zone, they wanted later seasons, but anytime you started going into November, there's a lot of hunters that wanted those November days. In the middle zone, if you would have just moved the season back a week, there was a couple of things that would happen. One, in most years, that would put you on having an opening day on the same day as the deer firearms season opens. 70% of middle zone hunters hunt at that time. And so that was the main reason, knowing they wanted late seasons. And if you did it, just by moving the season back a week, you would end up with some of those challenges with deer season. The other thing that this did by doing it on November 6th is actually in 2 of these years, it'll result in a middle zone season that will go about 12 days later than it did previously. So in your portion of the world, what that'll do is we've heard lots of discussion in the southeast Missouri. There's really a split of some people wanting that portion to be in the south zone and a lot of people that don't. They're comfortable with this days. With this formula, we'll have 2 years that'll put the seasons, again, about 12 weeks later, and it will provide really an opportunity to learn what the experience will be. And that's one of the other things we heard from hunters when we were talking to them. Well, if we've never done it before, why don't we try this to see if we can learn from it and see how we like it. So to me, this seems like it'll be a step in the direction to provide more experience for hunters in that direction to learn.
So I think what I hear you saying is that you have listened to what people are saying.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
I think just to comment on that, I think from what I heard when I attended those meetings and when you made your presentation about the data, one of the highlights of your data was you surveyed every person that attended as to what their favorite or the most important dates for them to hunt were. And that was a major factor in how you ended up on these dates, correct?
Oh, absolutely, right. And I can add, once we got done with the workshops, we did follow up and send an email to everybody who provided an email address at the workshop and told them what you all had decided. And virtually every one of the comments we heard was positive, and often it would be, we didn't maybe get what I personally wanted, but I can see where you came to the decision that you did, and we really appreciated that the department took the time to listen.
Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome. Moving on then to the bag limits, typically we recommend the maximum of what the federal framework allows. And this year, the bag limit opportunities that the Fish and Wildlife Service are offering are pretty much the same as they were last year, with 2 exceptions. Pintails, they're recommending only a 1 pintail limit. It had been 2. And on the other hand, we for years had a 1 black duck limit, and this year the Fish and Wildlife Service is offering a 2 pintail or black duck bag limit. And then again, the possession limit would be 3 times the daily bag limit. The reason for these 2 changes, if you look at the pintail numbers compared to 2015, they were slightly lower, and perhaps more important is that degree of settling. When pintail settle further north, they typically do that when conditions are dry, because they're just not good habitat to nest further south, so then they go further north. That habitat typically is not as good, and productivity is lower. And so you combine a slightly lower number, probably less production, and if you look at the framework for pintails, that resulted in them recommending that 1 per pintail bag limit. If you look at black ducks, it's a very different scenario. There's been lots of research in the last 10 years on trying to develop this black duck harvest strategy in cooperation with Canada. And in that process, they've used an entirely different approach than they have in the past to model things that affect populations. Through this new approach, they really were able to reduce some of the uncertainty associated with their estimates, and as a result, they were able to, it's basically suggesting that the black ducks could withstand a little bit more harvest than we maybe at one time thought they could. So if you look at those 2 matrices, you'll see the one has a lot of yellow, which would be a restricted season. Now it's pretty much lots of M's for that moderate season. So we would expect in years going forward, more than likely, will probably be kind of stable within this 2 black duck bag limit. The bottom line though, in Missouri, there are just very few black ducks that are harvested, with the exception along the the Mississippi River, and especially down in southeast Missouri along the Mississippi River. Then with the youth day considerations, we typically offer the youth season the weekend before the regular season begins, and we're recommending that again this year. And so that would mean the North and Middle Zone youth seasons being on the 28th and 29th of October, and then the South Zone on the 18th and 19th of November. I did want to make you aware, again, going back to the public comments and things, when we were hosting those public meetings, there was a fair amount of discussion about the youth season dates. And you'll notice now with the changes we've made with the regular season, our youth season waterfall dates are oftentimes going to fall on the same weekend as Deer youth season. And so there's some trade-offs involved with that. We did ask in our postseason harvest survey that went out after this last duck season, some questions about what hunter preferences are regarding the youth season. We didn't want to make any recommendations for any change without that public input. And so once we have that input after this year, perhaps next year, we might be proposing something different. But just wanted to make you aware, in case you do hear some things, we are looking at it and seeing what options might be more appropriate, if any, going forward. Turning our attention then to geese. Again, we're changing the Mississippi Flyway, the way we manage Canada geese. In other years, I've often given you an update on the status of the eastern prairie population of Canada geese, which nest on the western portion of that area on the Hudson Bay. We now are managing all interior Canada geese together. And so looking at that number, it's a new survey. This was the first year, and just to give you an idea of the numbers, it was about 65,000. If you look at the Mississippi Flyway temperate nesting Canada geese, the ones that nest in Missouri on up to southern Manitoba, you can see numbers that the last several years have been fairly stable, but a large number of 1.53 million Canada geese. If you look at white fronts, we do a survey in the fall, and here our numbers are about 1 million. They've been fairly high, fairly stable the last several years. If you turn our attention to snow geese, light geese, the numbers based on the midwinter survey in which Missouri participates suggested about 3.4 million. I will note that based on some other methods of counting them, the number is probably more like 15 million snow geese.
How many?
15 million, yeah. So there's still a lot of snow geese. Then going back to Canada geese and what I was mentioning with the change in management, if you look, previously we managed by, really all of our Canada goose harvest management was driven by those interior populations. The eastern prairie population, shown by that green, to the west it would have been the Mississippi Valley population, and then even further west, the southern James Bay population. So our frameworks in the west part of the flyway were different than, say, Illinois and Wisconsin and what they had. So regulations were really kind of complex within the flyway. So we're trying to move to a consolidated flyway framework. So again, we're looking at managing them all in aggregate. For the flyway, the objectives for this management is, again, to make sure that we have a sustainable population that's providing good opportunity for hunter participation in harvest, and at the same time recognizing that there are places where Canada geese can create problems. And so that we're maintaining that public support for actively managing this population as well, to deal with some of those conflicts that emerge between geese and people. The frameworks from the flyway then are a 107-day season with a 5-bird daily bag in September, and then a 3-bird bag after that till February 15th. The white front framework is an 88-day 2-bird bag or a 74-day with a 3-bird bag. And our approach, beginning with last year, this was our first year of actually implementing it, was to have a 9-day early Canada goose season, an 88-day goose season that included Canada's white fronts and snow geese that runs from Veterans Day to February 6th, and then a bag limit of 2 white fronts, 3 Canada geese, and 20 light geese. The reason why we began this approach last year is, one, it simplifies regulations. We're actually offering more opportunity than we ever have, with some of that additional opportunity being before Thanksgiving, when you can have that concurrent duck and goose hunting opportunity. And we're offering more late season opportunity that week in February. Previously, the federal framework in our seasons ended on January 31st. So there was almost a week of later hunting for Canada geese and white fronts. And so with that in mind, if we would stick with what we did last year, we would be recommending the same thing, that early 9-day Canada goose season beginning on October 7th, and then a goose season that would run from November 11th through the 6th, and then a conservation order that would begin on February 7th and run till April 30th. Now, with these changes, there are a couple of questions that we're still monitoring and seeing what the impact will be. Again, going back kind of to learn while we're doing, is what will the impact of these liberal seasons have on our Missouri Canada goose population? We recognize this population is important for our local harvest, as well as the bird viewing and other opportunities they provide. If you look at our numbers locally, we talked about 1.5 million in the Mississippi Flyway. We only have about less than 50, around 50,000 that nest in Missouri, and that number's been fairly stable. Joni mentioned Lucas being in the helicopter with Doreen today. That was flying this survey to get this information. But the Canada geese are nesting is the perfect time to assess numbers. And so Doreen and I both next week will be in the helicopter and finishing up that survey. We also track harvest rates. You can see in 2010, that was the last time we had a major liberalization, and there was a slight blip, where survival went down a little bit. But it looks like our Missouri Canada geese have been sustaining the additional harvest that we put on them, and hopefully we'll see the same thing hold true, where our Canada goose numbers will stay the same, survival will stay about the same. We don't want to see them going up much more, and we don't want to see them declining from where they're at. And then the other question was, well, how would hunters respond to the change? Again, we don't have any quantified data at this point, but thus far, anecdotally, the response has been very favorably. We've heard lots of Canada goose and white front goose hunters say we really appreciate that late season opportunity. For whatever reason, the white fronts are starting to use Missouri much more, and lots of hunters were really glad to be able to have that opportunity to hunt them in early February. We only received, that I'm aware of, one complaint from a conservation order hunter that said, why are you delaying the conservation order? And that was from an out-of-state guide who was concerned that it was cutting into the amount of trips he could provide. But want to point out, even if the conservation isn't open, you can still hunt snow geese during that first week of February. You just can't use an electronic call and some of those more liberal methods. So far, the response has been very favorable. Then turning to attention to the last bit on the waterfalls, the falconry season. It basically can be open whenever the gun seasons are open for waterfowl, and we're recommending that to be the case. And then opening it for the extended falconry season in the late part of the season, from February 10th to March 10th. And again, we made this change several years ago in response to requests by the falconers to have their extended season dates at that point. And should note, there's about 150 odd or so, not odd falconers, 150 odd number of folks that participate in the falconry season. And now turning then finally to what the outlook looks like. We don't have any, this early, any status information, but the one good news is if you look at maps from last year compared to this year, if you look at yellows and browns and reds, those are bad from a standpoint of water on the landscape. And you can see last year a fairly large chunk of the Dakotas were fairly dry, and even a good chunk of Prairie Canada. This year, it's looking very good for the conditions going into the spring, with the exception of western Alberta. And so hopefully things are setting the stage for a good season for waterfowl production this upcoming year. And so again, just to show you the summary of where we landed with sticking with the formulas that you approved last spring, using the same goose framework that we used last year, and running the conservation order the same as we have in the past in the falconry season, the same as we have in the past. And that's the information that I have to hopefully help you in your deliberation over the recommendation.
Thank you very much, and
You're welcome.
any questions? Commissioner Bradford?
No, just a statement, thank you, Andy and Noreen, you're always so detailed and so professional, and really appreciate you giving back to the people in the public meetings. I deeply appreciate that, very responsive, so thank you.
Those duck hunters have an opinion, don't they?
Yes.
Commissioner Bedell?
Always impressive, Andy, you know, Noreen, do fabulous work. Appreciate it, thank you.
But yeah, I mean, I think you guys have done an amazing job, and I've been to those meetings, and our waterfowl hunters are blessed to have the staff that we have now, as well as a long lineage and legacy of outstanding waterfowl and wetland biologists. I don't wanna upset the apple cart by trying to offer an amendment to the reg. I guess it's an action item we're gonna be asked to
We'll
vote on.
get to that.
Whether we get to it or not, my comment is I really, really want you to rethink that aspect of it. Thank you.
The Dove Park?
Thank you.
You're okay, Sandy? Tom?
Mr. Chairman and Commission, in your packet, you will find orders of rulemaking for 3 CSR 10-7.440 migratory game birds and waterfowl seasons. Limits to be established for the 2017-2018 migratory bird and waterfowl seasons. And as an action item, I would request Commission approval of these recommendations as proposed by Andy and Noreen in their presentations.
Have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Under the Robert's Rules of Order, I would like to hear some discussion if a substitute motion was offered in order to remove the Eurasian doves from the mourning doves portion. If there's support for that, I'd like to hear it. If there's not support for that, then we can move on.
I confess to ignorance on my part as to what portion of Baghdad actually is. I don't know how common they are.
I'm just clarifying that there were no federal restrictions, and I think Noreen covered that there isn't any federal law that prevents us from doing that, so.
It doesn't sound like it's a huge deal, Mr. Chairman, but so I would, remove my substitute motion, but I think I made my point, and I would respect the Regs Committee process and ask that next year we really take a hard look, because I've really thought this through. If somebody's sitting there with 14 doves in a pile, and the last dove they shoot is a Eurasian dove, it doesn't put them in jeopardy, right? So I don't understand why it's problematic to have it not count. They could sit there with 14 doves in a pile and shoot another 14 Eurasian doves. They violated no federal law and not put themselves in jeopardy if we eliminated the Eurasian dove from the regulation. Am I correct in what I just stated?
Yes, I think so, yes.
So I would ask them to remove it, but I don't want to be hasty.
Yeah, I defer to our, personally, and this is just discussion.
People, they've got a different view.
Yeah, we certainly would need to consider that as well. I defer to the recommendation we have from staff at this point. I don't see a reason personally to amend that or change that without pretty careful consideration of any unforeseen consequences there might
Fair
be.
enough. It's not a big enough issue to rock the boat at this point, but I would like to consider going forward.
I think the point's made, Jim.
Thank you, and I'll cease.
So we have a motion, we have a second to approve those as made. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and as Regulations Committee Chair, I've written a note for this discussion, and we will consider it in our deliberations next year, so.
Thank you.
I would like a few more minutes of your time, if I may, to update the commission on a few other things here. At our meeting, as final order of business, General Counsel Jennifer Frazier provided the committee with an overview of Governor Greitens' Executive Order 17-03. Ms. Frazier noted that the order requires state agencies to provide specific information on all proposed regulation changes and a summary of all public comments received on those proposed rules to the governor's office. Agencies must also conduct a thorough review of their regulations and submit a comprehensive report by May 31st, 2018. While the governor recognizes the commission's constitutional authority to promulgate rules, the department has agreed to comply with certain aspects of the executive order. Specifically, staff will provide copies of all proposed rulemakings with the specific information requested to the governor's office. And I might add that Andy prepared, there was a format. Those questions have been answered. They had been submitted to the governor's office concerning these waterfowl regs. Additionally, I've tasked a team to conduct a thorough review of the wildlife code, similar to the review completed for state statute in 2016 and document finding using the format provided by the governor's office, which is a bit different than the report in 2016. I will provide a summary of that review to the commission as part of my formal report of the Regulations Committee next spring, probably in May. Commissioner, any questions on that piece?
Any questions?
There's no action item here.
That's correct.
Precedent, it's just information.
Informational purposes, correct. Commissioner, since my last Regulations Committee report, citizens have provided input on regulations pertaining to waterfowl hunting permits, commercial turtle harvest, commercial and or recreational harvest of large catfish from the Missouri and Mississippi rivers, deer and turkey hunting, and rules that govern activities allowed on public land. A summary of those comments is included in my formal report beginning on page 7. And as you will see, there are numerous folks that weigh in, and we are privileged to have that input as we deliberate on how to find a balance between sustaining a resource and providing public opportunity. Finally, upcoming meetings of the Regulations Committee are scheduled April 12th, May 24th, July 27th, which will be our mid-year code review. And I would say, given some of the conversations that have recently occurred, the high water regulation, the issue of concentration of wildlife due to flooding in the Delta region of our state is going to be under further deliberation at that point in mid-year code review. And then we'll also meet in September and November. And Mr. Chairman, commissioners, unless there are other questions, this concludes my Regulations Committee report.
Closing comments or questions, Don?
I would only make one comment, and that would be, as we go forward, and in looking at the book, and thank you because you give us a copy that we can read. I'm not sure how all the agents can read that little fine print. But at any rate, I would hope that in the mid-year review, that we go through that book, and anything that can be removed would be removed. I know that gets very laborious, Mr. Chairman, but we, like every other government agency, I think in time stack one reg on top of another reg on top of another reg. And I know, Tom, that you're conscious of that, the Regs Committee is, and I would certainly encourage it.
Thanks, Commissioner. Point well made.
Commissioner Blair?
Yeah, I think you guys do a great job, and I only wish the public had an inkling of how hard this agency works and the team works to seek and consider public opinion. I've said it publicly, and I know we're on television now. We don't have an agenda when it comes to managing the waterfowl season. Our goal through these public meetings was to seek the public's folks' input and try and deliver the best quality, the most hunting days possible, and the public needs to show up at these meetings and to get the outcome they want. Thank you, and thank the staff.
Yeah, it's the work of the staff that, they're tremendous.
Very big job.
Mr. Burke.
Just appreciate the time and detail that you put in on these regulations because it's not an easy task. And appreciate the opportunity then to second Commissioner Goodell's point about reducing the number of days. Because a lot of times in government, we just keep adding and we don't pay a lot of attention to the ones that are already there that probably don't apply anymore in some sense.
All right.
Thank you.
I've gotta say it then. If I were cooking a recipe, I sure wouldn't wanna leave out a couple of key ingredients. So make sure we get the regulations right, keep them as concise as we can, and I know we'll make that effort. But don't shorten them just to leave out something important too.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Anyway, for a short break.
Yes, well, let's take a short break.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Jacob, welcome to the podium, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, Director Polly. I have the next two agenda items for the commission. The first one is the major construction project status report. It is in your advanced materials. I'd like to highlight a few projects if I may. On the first page, under the shooting ranges category, on line 6, the range construction project is well underway. The time of this report is approximately 45% complete. Even though we've had a little bit of weather the last couple of weeks, we're still looking at a July completion for construction, and then the effort will then be focused on making the facility operational in time for the firearm season in the fall. On line 7, the lakes and ponds category at Long Branch Lake, that project is 50% complete. We were able to work with the Corps to get some work done, get the water levels lowered so we could get in there and do the work, and we expect to be finished with that work this spring. On the second page of the report, under the wetlands category on line 9, Grand Pass Conservation Area, that pump station river intake repairs project is complete. That was a hybrid project where we used a contractor to do part of the work, and then we had MDC, design development staff, complete the actual repairs on the intakes. Under the hatchery improvements category on line 10 at Montauk Fish Hatchery, the bulk feed tower project, that contract has been executed, and there is a pre-construction meeting scheduled for next Friday, April 14th. And work will then get underway shortly after that. On the third page of the report, under the major renovation repair category, on line 1 at Rocco's Reservation, the bridge replacement project is going very well, and the contractor is 25% complete as of the date of this report. That concludes my remarks on the status report. If you have to answer any questions.
Any questions, Commissioner Bradford?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Blair?
No.
Commissioner Goodell? Thank you,
Thank you.
Jay.
None.
Please proceed.
The next item is an action item for the commission. It is a recommendation for authorization to enter into a contract with Martin General Contractors, LLC of Eolia, Missouri for the access development project at the lead mine conservation area in Dallas County at a total estimated cost of $378,312. It is further requested that a contingency fund of $19,000 be authorized to apply to unforeseen conditions. Total authorization requested is $397,312. The second low bid was $427,870 as shown in the attached bid tabulation in your advanced materials. The project is eligible for 75% reimbursement of the total project cost through a federal sportfish restoration grant. Martin General Contractors has completed many public works projects, and they are currently working on the kettle replacement project at Honeywell Lake Conservation Area. Design and Development Division and Fisheries Division recommend the bid as submitted by the low bidder be accepted.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
The only comment I would make is the 75% reimbursement by the federal partners, so grateful for that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Andrew.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners, Director Paul, Ms. Maples. It's my pleasure to present the financial summary. It's item 8 on the agenda. Due to the quickness of the April Commission meeting, we do not have a March 2017 financial summary available, so I'm going to review the February version that you already have in your advanced materials. I'll focus on the receipts and disbursements pages. On the receipts summary, conservation sales tax, our 1.8% higher than last year at this time, and consistent with our expected budget as of February. In addition, according to the most recent sales tax report we have for March from the Office of Administration, sales and use taxes increased 2.2% from the previous year. Permanent sales are projected at 1.2% lower than last year and 2.1% higher than projected so far this fiscal year. Again, that decrease is really due to a shift in some of the payments going to the vendors, or some of the revenues staying with the vendors to offset their additional costs. Please note this doesn't mean there's been a decrease in actual permits sold. Because I said yesterday, permits are actually up as of March, 9,400 higher than this time last year. Federal reimbursements are 2.8% higher than last year, and at the level we expected at this point in the year. Sales and rentals is 4% higher than last year and 2.9% higher than expected. The other line is 110% higher than last year and 17.5% higher than expected. And this is due to the large donations and the SEMA reimbursements we are receiving in 17 versus 16. That brings total receipts through February 2017 at 2.4% higher than last year at this time, and 0.5% or very close to what we expected at this point. On the disbursement summary, you have them bucketed into 4 major disbursement categories: personal service, expense, equipment, and capitals. For the personal services disbursements, it's the first bold line on the disbursements page. It shows a 2.3% increase in expenditures from the previous year and a 0.8% decrease from the expectation through February of 2017. The next bold line shows the fiscal year-to-date total expense disbursements are 2.4% higher than last year and 0.4% lower than anticipated at this point in the fiscal year. Equipment disbursements are shown on the third bold line on the page at 19.4% lower than this time last year and 7.8% higher than expected so far this year. Total capital disbursements represented as the second to the last bold line are 41% higher than last year and 2.8% higher than budgeted at this point in the fiscal year. Some of the cause of that is land acquisitions were purchased much earlier in the year than in previous years. Normally, a lot of the purchases are made in the last quarter of the year. Total disbursements for FY17 through February are 4.6% higher than this time last year and consistent or 0.1% within expectations. This concludes my remarks in the financial summary.
Mary Lynn, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Andrew, appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the reports. I think you've done a good job, and just want to reiterate, for the public and for everybody in the room, the size of this organization and the amount of money that we manage really warrants us taking a fresh look and having a CFO of your caliber, and I would expect that you're empowered and challenged and have a big responsibility here to really be the one carrying the conversation. I think we've relied frequently on biologists and forestry people and land management specialists to get out and talk about the budgets for their departments. But I think for this commission to perform effectively and communicate successfully with this department, I think you play a pivotal role in that, in improving that communication. And welcome you, and I know you in very short order worked on that budget and addressing it so it's a zero-sum, tighter budget. So I commend you on that work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blue?
Andrew, I'm sorry I was unable to be there yesterday, but thank you for the hard work that you're doing. What I would like in the future, and you did not cover the fund balance, but we show February disbursements coming out of that balance of $15.5 million. And I would like something in the next presentation that shows what that is for, Mr. Chairman. If you'd be so kind as to provide that to us, I would really appreciate it.
Any further? Please.
Also, you show under current payables, an amount of almost $5 million to come out of the commission fund balance. I'd like to know what that's for next time. I would call the commission's attention to the fact that we are currently in excess of $5 million over past year expenditures. So we'll be addressing that as we go forward in the May meeting. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Bill. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Polly. Yesterday, we talked real briefly during the budget hearing about the public outpour of support for monarchs and pollinators. And that support for us is a gateway to reach urban residents and ag producers and everybody in between. And the good thing about monarchs and pollinators is that their habitat is host to a whole suite of grassland wildlife, from songbirds and quail to box turtles and everything in between. And so this has spurred the department to action, and as a result, we've become a state and national leader in working on monarch habitat restoration. Here today to give you an update of what the department has been doing related to monarch and pollinators is our ag liaison, Brent Vanderloop. Brent has been with the department for 13 years, serving most of his time as a private land conservationist at Marshall and Brookfield. He came to the central office 2 years ago as ag liaison and has had a very positive impact on our relationships with state level ag leaders. He's very dedicated to his job. He can be found every once in a while walking through a burned field with ashes, in dress shoes, shirt and tie, helping a partner see the monarch planting. Or he does have a pair of monarch wings that he wears for special occasions. I have pictures of both. Please welcome Brent. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Director Polly, Rhonda. It's good to be here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to visit with you today. I'm going to give you an overview of the department's efforts regarding monarch butterflies and pollinators over the last couple of years. Before I get too far into that, I want to give you a little bit of background information on monarchs. As you all likely know, monarchs are a very interesting insect due to their unique migration patterns. This map shows the primary migration routes that monarchs use each year. And it typically takes 4 generations of monarchs to make the trek from the Midwest down to Mexico each year. As you may or may not know, the blue dot on the map there is where the overwintering grounds in Mexico are at, where monarchs spend their time in fir forests over the winter. So November through March, they're there. The generation will start to migrate north. They'll get to about Texas, reproduce, have some caterpillars. Those generations continue to migrate north throughout the summer. Then in August, as the nights start to cool off a little bit, the generations in the Midwest will go through a type of diapause, and they'll make that migration all the way back to that same area in Mexico to the wintering grounds. Now I should mention, monarchs are very picky eaters. You guys probably know that, but they're dependent on milkweed as caterpillars. They have to have milkweed to survive. And then as adults, they really feed on a diverse array of wildflowers and nectaring plants for their nutrition. This picture here is a picture of monarch habitat down in Mexico, the wintering grounds. And just looking at these pictures, you think, boy, there's a lot of monarchs out here. There's nothing to worry about. But monarch numbers have been decreasing over the last 20 years. They've actually decreased to the point where there's been trilateral direction given at the national level from the countries of the United States, Canada, and Mexico to address the issue. Just to kind of put it in perspective, the average habitat in Mexico, the populations are measured by the habitat in Mexico. This picture on the right are those forests the monarchs look like that. So there's usually about 15 acres of habitat covered like that in the winter. That's the average. However, in the last 10 years, every year has been below average, with the lowest being in 2013 and 14 with 2.3 acres of habitat covered. So the monarch numbers have really went down. In 2014, kind of in response to this trilateral direction, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was charged with developing a national strategy to help conserve monarchs. The goal was to have about 220 million monarchs down in Mexico by 2020. Excuse me. Currently, we're sitting at about 110 million monarchs. So we're only about halfway to the goal where we want to be. And there's numerous reasons for that. Part of it is illegal logging in Mexico, but there's a lot of other factors influencing the monarchs, such as pesticide use. There's a lot of natural enemies out there, mowing, non-native invasive species, simple lack of milkweed, climate change may play a role, and land use changes. So lots of different factors going on. Excuse me. I forgot to change my slide. That's what you all want to see out there. It's a real diverse habitat out there on the landscape for monarchs. So I mentioned the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had a directive to create some habitat. The response to this, basically a national pilot was developed from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They partnered with NDC, the National Wildlife Federation, Missouri Prairie Foundation to hold a pilot summit to basically have a summit to get together and talk about what are the issues, what work has already been completed for monarchs, where can we find common ground to help develop a collaborative monarch restoration plan to bring them back. So in the summer of 2015, Missouri held this pilot program. We had 45 different partners show up at the meeting, representing 32 organizations, and you can see from the slide a lot of diverse groups out there, ranging from Audubon to the Missouri Farm Bureau, Missouri Prairie Foundation, a lot of NGOs, a lot of government agencies, and really a lot of ag groups came to the table. We had the Missouri Corn Growers Association, the Cattlemen's Association, MFA, Monsanto, all at the table. And the summit was really a success. In fact, no other state has had such a broad coalition come together and work towards helping monarchs since. The pilot that we were a part of and created has kind of turned into a document to guide other states through their process, and 9 other states have emulated what we've done in Missouri. And so it was a true success, our summit was. From the summit, that group basically morphed into a collaborative organization called the Missourians for Monarchs. And this group worked together over about a year to create our state plan, which is approved last May. And we had a celebration at the state fair to celebrate that plan. And Missouri had the first monarch conservation plan in the United States, and I think to date there's 3 or 4 other states that have those plans. Bill White and I both represent the department on the Missouri for Monarch Steering Committee, and we provide oversight and guidance, for project deliverables that we may have and all decision-making issues of the group. Helping resolve conflicts between partners, we have those every now and then too. So, the Missouri plan called for creating 385,000 acres of new habitat over the next 25 years. That's 19,000 acres per year over the next 20 years. And an ideal acre for monarchs would be an acre that had a diverse array of wildflower species blooming at different times of the year, and also have about 200 stems of milkweed out there too per acre. And I say stems, it's not 200 plants. It's one milkweed plant could have 10 or 12 stems. But we need that diverse array of milkweed and wildflowers out there on the landscape. So, and the way we derived that 385,000 acre number was basically a step down process in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is what they estimated we need to come up with back in 2014. We also hired a coordinator to carry out this plan, and that was really a fantastic effort from numerous partners, the Fish and Wildlife Service, NDC, NRCS, Quail Forever, Monsanto, and MFA all provided funds for that position. And that guy's been on board with us now for almost a year, and he's hired some part-time help to get a website up. Our plan's a 3-year plan. We look at each year and review, see if we need to make any changes. If some research comes out where, we've come up with some new science, we need to change direction, we have the flexibility to do that and utilize best management practices as they become available. And I'll tell you just as a side note, this plan has been really nice to have as I go around serving on the national committee because everybody's really interested in the Missouri plan. And Elsa Gallagher of Quail Forever, one of our partnership positions, she said it best in Texas the other day, but she said she felt like she was walking through a dog pound with a piece of meat around her neck. Everybody was wanting a piece of the Missouri plan to see what we had been up to.
I know, Elsa, that does sound a little dangerous.
Yeah. So one of the exercises with our summit before the plan was done to figure out what had been done in the state already, and we came up with 4 or 5 pages of really fantastic stuff. But just to kind of give you a little overview of what the agency's been doing, we're actively managing about 50,000 acres of glade, savanna, and woodland natural communities each year on our public lands. We've got some research going on neonicotinoid studies, the seed coatings for some of the row crop plants we have in the state. We're actually looking at our community farmers are using conventional cropping practices in our food plots on public lands where we went insecticide free, so we're doing some studies there. Looking at also at insect recolonization on our grassland restoration projects. We're producing milkweed plants down at the nursery for use on conservation areas. Private Land Services Division has provided $250,000 for CRP monarch incentives. That funding was matched by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, so we've been through about $500,000 of incentive money to create pollinator habitats in the last couple of years. Our landowner assistance program, we're creating about 900 acres a year of diverse pollinator habitat through that program, and we work with master naturalists on several different projects. Well, I got this slide up here. There's 3 demonstration. There's a lot of these examples, but the one on my left is a project we did with the Association of Missouri Electrical Cooperatives, just a demo pollinator plot at their headquarters. That led to an article in the Rural Missourian where we reached about 2 to 3 million subscribers, so that was pretty neat. And that building there is in Jeff City. The A.L. Gustin Golf Course, we worked with a bunch of kids on 2 separate occasions in Columbia to spread pollinator seed in some of the out of bounds areas, so it's a little harder for guys to find their golf balls next summer. And then the Show Me Pollinator Plots is a cooperative project we got going on with Quail Forever. We're doing little plots outside of schools. So we've done about 30 of those where the kids are planting wildflower plots. And we've even got a picture of Deputy Director Draper up there in St. Louis. I'm not sure exactly what the event was, but it was a youth event in St. Louis. So lots of events going on, lots of projects. But we've also got a lot of information out there for the public. This is our website, but we created a handout called Backyard Habitat for Monarch Butterflies. And this was created in cooperation with Monarch Watch. But this basically is just a how-to information on putting some pollinator habitat in your backyards. We've got another one for some of your larger landowners that is an information sheet we worked on with NRCS. This will walk you through the process of establishing a new plot or managing current plots. Our PLCs use those quite often. And this is a publication put out by O&E that's proved real popular. These things are flying off the shelves at the state fair. But this is about a 20-page milkweeds and monarchs document that we introduced, and it's been very popular. So I also serve on the Mid-America, I guess the MAFWA, Technical Steering Committee to develop a national plan, looking at monarchs. And we're basically looking at developing a strategy that is going to be comprised of all 16 states in the Midwest. It's going to combine Missouri's plan with other state and regional plans, and it'll coordinate multiple conservation efforts, all in an effort to accomplish common habitat and population goals across the monarch range. And again, NBC has consistently been looked at as a leader in some of those meetings. We've set up a draft governance structure. This is all, really, this Midwest group's about 2 years behind where we're at in Missouri. But this draft governance structure has been set up. The MAFWA president recently appointed an interim leadership group that was charged with finalizing this governance structure. And I believe Director Pauly's serving on that interim committee. And then I'm working on the technical steering committee. We're called upon from time to time to help determine monitoring protocols or habitat goals, whatever the issue may be. Attended a meeting down in Texas in January, and our technical committee basically was developed with, or charged with developing a framework for this strategy that will conserve eastern populations of monarchs and help determine whether monarch habitat has been established in the next 2 or 3 years well enough to keep them off the endangered species list. That's certainly the goal. One of the tools we've used, and I don't intend for you all to look at this slide, it's really busy, but it's a spreadsheet where we can look at 15 or 20 different habitat types and determine the adoption rates of those habitats. So we can plug in some numbers and it punches out a number, tells us how good we're doing. It's basically a matrix to help us develop habitat goals in the state. And we've just gotten this tool within the last few weeks. It has a few limitations, but we're working through it to see if we need to adjust our Missouri state numbers with some of the national goals. This map here shows the different management units that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has set up for monarchs. And this stuff is still kind of in draft form, but I wanted to show it to you today because it shows the importance of Missouri in this effort. The dark purple area in the Midwest up here, that is where about 50% of the monarchs in the United States come from that migrate to Mexico. Preliminary numbers or draft numbers the Fish and Wildlife Service give us, they say we need to create about 20 million acres of new habitat in the Midwest to help monarchs. And then that migration route south that's in a lavender or purple that goes from mid-Missouri down through Texas, about another 4 million acres of habitat need to be created there for monarchs. So the goal is 1.6 billion stems in the United States, and that translates to 6 hectares in Mexico, which is those 15 acres I talked about. So we're way below that right now, but we're working on it. We got a lot of people engaged and getting excited about what we're doing. So the next steps, we just came up with a draft outline of the plan. The first draft of the Mid-American Plan is due in October. The final draft is in May of 2018, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service plans on having a listing determination in June of 2019. I guess I wanted to close out just by saying that monarchs are an iconic species that everyone can relate to, whether you're a rural farm kid or you grew up in an urban area. And this movement is really proven to tug at the heartstrings of a lot of people. You can see from the diverse array of partners that we have. There's a lot of folks on board that our summit was a fantastic turnout. You know, we had the Audubon, Farm Bureau. Everyone agrees that monarchs are important. But I would be remiss not to say that monarchs are really a poster child for a lot of pollinators out there. Crops such as citrus fruits, cranberries, many vegetables depend on pollination, and you can see from the slide up here that 75% of the crop species in the world require some sort of pollination, and honeybees alone are responsible for greater than $29 billion of economic activity in the crop world. In the end, that relates out to 1 out of every 3 mouthfuls of food, is based on pollinators. So it's not just about monarchs, it's also about pollinators. And that's why the department is committed to monarch and pollinator conservation, not only because of the threats they face, the importance to the economy, but also we're reaching a lot of new audiences that help connect citizens with fish, forest, and wildlife. Take any questions you might have.
Great presentation, thank you. I'm glad you got into the bees as pollinators, so that was one of the questions I had. I'd like to circle back to kind of touched on it, but you didn't get into it, the chemical aspect. I've talked to a lot of private land specialists, I've talked to a lot of people that are in the field every day, and anecdotally heard some opinions that there's plants out there and there's plant communities out there, it's chemicals that are a bigger problem and no one really wants to talk about it. Can you comment on that?
I could try.
Yeah. Put you on the spot.
I think opinions vary. I mean, no doubt, some of the neonicotinoids they kill insects. That's what they're made to do. There's some debate as to off target. You know, how much of a buffer do we need to leave between our drift would be another one. But you know, how much of a buffer do we leave between neonicotinoid use and a suitable habitat? And those are things that need to be worked out still. I don't have a solid answer for you on that today. You mentioned bees. I can tell you there's over 450 species of native bees in Missouri too, and they're doing, you know, they're the workhorses when it comes to pollination.
I guess the reason I bring it up is it's easy to talk about the stuff that feels good, and it's easy to talk about the stuff that sells in the grade schools and the kids want to work on, and families and little displays outside the grade schools. But if that isn't going to be what moves the needle, then it's up to the scientists in this organization and the commission to have the starch to bring up the tough subjects to make sure that we're advocating for the things that are going to actually make a difference.
Sure.
And I want to get that message out there. And then the other thing I think I saw, when I looked at your partnerships, I see Monsanto's name, which is great. I see ag community. I think when you're talking about the ag community, you're talking about farmers, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. What I didn't see on there is the seed growers as partners in that. Do you have seed growers at the table as part of that partnership?
We don't have seed grow. You mean like a Syngenta or something like that?
People that, I mean, if you're going to put, how many, 900,000 acres? What was the quote?
385,000.
1,000 acres, that's going to require a lot of seed. That seed's really expensive.
For pollinator seed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're on board. Yeah, the
Are
native.
they part of the partnership, right?
Yeah,
Are they
absolutely.
at the table?
Yeah, the native seed growers
And
are
local ones.
they're a big partner, and that's actually you know, one of the limitations is the seed right now, and we're working through some ways to get more seed source out there, and some ways to, and I think there may be opportunities for farmers to get involved, you know, in raising wildfire seed.
Thank you.
So.
Commissioner Bedell?
Good presentation, very enlightening. I noticed MoDOT was on there as one of the participants, as one of the partners. And I guess I would ask if the extent of their cooperation includes allowing the planting of some of this on the rights of way.
Yeah, there was, I can't remember exactly which states it was, but there was a 4 or 5 state coalition that has agreed to establish pollinator habitats along rights of ways. And MoDOT has been at all of our meetings, and they're still involved with the steering committee meeting. In Missouri, they've been moving maybe a little bit slower. They have not committed to an acreage, but they're still considering that.
Yes.
But then all the butterflies get hit by windshields.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner West?
I just have a brief question. I do appreciate the detail that you've gone into and bringing all these new partners to the table. What about levee districts? Are they engaged with you in any manner?
Not that I know of right now. I will say, I think that's an excellent idea. Our Missourians for Monarch groups, you know, has kind of been active for about a year, and we're taking on new partners every day, and that's one that we probably ought to reach out to because there's a lot of opportunity there. if you can reseed them, you know, when it's not gonna flood or something. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Brent, every time I sit here, I find a new dimension of my ignorance, but I want to make sure that I understand a couple of things. First, am I correct in my mental math of following the migration? It would require 8 generations of monarchs to go north and south, or is it 4 to make one full trip north and south in the migration?
It's 4.
Okay,
It takes 2 or 3 to go north, and then the final generation migrates all the way south.
thank you. Then my other question, and this is the real exhibition of ignorance, how many species of migratory butterfly do we have in Missouri?
That's a fantastic question for somebody who can answer it.
Just encourage me to.
I don't know the answer.
And I think it'd be worth knowing, since we're putting all these resources into one, it'd be good to know if we've got 3,000 others.
Yeah, I'm sure there are others. I'm in the private exhibition on the chimpanzees.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I will find out for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Good presentation.
Excellent work.
Good afternoon, Commission. I have the next agenda item, and it is an action item 10. I am bringing forth a recommendation for your approval to convey approximately 0.048 acre of Wire Road Conservation Area in Stone County to Stone County for a bridge replacement project, and also to grant Stone County a temporary construction easement on an additional 0.181 acre until the project is complete.
Second.
A second, is there any discussion? I'd only make the observation that this is critical habitat for McCloud River rainbows, a rare and precious natural resource, and this makes the world better for them. Good move. Thank you. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Next agenda item, seek approval to exchange 1.27 acres of the Frederick Marshall Conservation Area in Platte County for 1.27 acres, acre tract in Platte County owned by Keith Kisker and Sherry Kisker as an addition to Frederick Marshall Conservation Area. This is an exchange that will clarify some boundary issues.
Have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Director Pauley and Ms. Maples. My item is not an action item, it is an informational item. On March 13th of this year, Governor Greitens signed Executive Order 17-09, which would allow 6 weeks of paid leave for primary caregivers and 3 weeks for secondary caregivers for state employees upon the birth or adoption of a child. That executive order excluded employees of independent commissions, but the governor encouraged those agencies to adopt comparable policies. At this time, we're evaluating the executive order, monitoring parental leave policy drafts to other state agencies, and once we've assimilated that information and had a chance to further review the executive order, we'll further discuss this with you at a later date.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions?
None.
Commissioner Blair?
None, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Good afternoon, I have the next action item. It's a recommendation for approval to suspend or revoke mining privileges of 2 separate individuals who inflicted injury to another person on.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask that we take these revocations up separately.
Sure. Could you take the first, please?
Yes, the first individual is an individual who was in a contested hearing and was,
Mr. Moran,
yes,
I would like to move to approve the hearing officer's finding of fact on that one, and I'd like the conclusions of law and further to approve a 2-year revocation of hunting privileges for that incident.
Do I have a second to that motion? Do we have a second? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
The second individual is a juvenile with a recommended 1-year suspension of hunting privileges.
Do I have a motion to that
I'd
effect?
vote to approve that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
The next item, first I just want to say thank you to staff over the past couple of weeks. I think we all know it's been rather hectic at the Capitol. But the work of staff in the field to still get legislators out for field trips, whether it's muskie sampling or going to Smithville to sample walleye, to get a representative out that seems rather quiet at the Capitol, get them out and vote with staff, and really see that person open up and realize the resources that he has in his district has been wonderful. On the flip side of that, I just want to thank our division chiefs and the director's office staff. The past couple of weeks, we've had numerous hearings. I've had to lean on Larry about every day this week to go to the Capitol for hearings, and that's been tremendous to have him in uniform testifying in front of the Senate or House committee. Just some of the highlights, really just the past 2 weeks. The Budget Committee 2 weeks ago completed markup on the budget bills. During that hearing, there was considerable discussion on feral hogs. In fact, there was an amendment offered that would have prohibited the department from using our helicopter to eradicate feral hogs. Several legislators spoke up in support of the department, recognizing that this was a very important tool that we needed to use in remote areas and to eradicate those last couple hogs. Representative Don Roan, who has personal experience from down at Black Island, noted that the helicopter was very important in eradicating hogs from that landscape. After about half an hour and input from myself, that amendment failed in the committee. There was also an amendment that was offered that would reduce the department's flexibility between the divisions. Flexibility was reduced to 15% for all divisions, except for private land services, which was increased to 35%. Throughout the summer, throughout the budget hearings, we had stressed that private land services was up against the rope last year, and we weren't able to allocate cost share to landowners as a result. And this resulted in private land services receiving more flexibility, but all the other divisions taking a hit. So we'll be working with the Senate Appropriations Committee to hopefully restore that flexibility. This week as well, the House actually debated the budget bills on the House floor. As you all are aware, Representative Craig Redmond offered an amendment on the House floor that reduced the Director's Office Administration's spending authorization by $500,000. I'm hoping to work with Representative Redmond and Senator Dan Brown to restore some of that funding. I really want to thank Commissioner Murphy for going up to the Capitol yesterday, meeting with it seemed like last week, meeting with Senator Brown, meeting with Representative Craig Redmond and other folks to kind of talk through some of the issues and their concerns that they had voiced on the House floor. Other action this week, it was extremely busy on the House floor. They took up House Bill 181, which is our littering fix bill. There was no opposition to the bill. It was perfected on the floor, and that will likely be third read next week. Now, the good thing is we've been working with other members. There's a couple omnibus bills that have that language in the bill, and that will likely be the legislation that will move forward over the next 5 weeks of session. I got it tucked away in about 3 or 4 different places right now. Also, this week on Wednesday, House Joint Resolution 40, which would expand the Conservation Commission to 8 members with 1 per region. That was voted out of the House Conservation and Natural Resources Committee by a vote of 6-4. It will now go to the Rules Committee, which is chaired by Representative Jay Barnes here in Jefferson City. Last Monday, there was also a hearing on Senate Joint Resolution 16, which would sunset the conservation sales tax. Several conservation groups showed up in opposition of the legislation. In fact, about 16 or 18 individuals showed up and testified on that bill. This week, we also testified on House Bill 176, which addresses some of the animal trespass issues that we've heard from landowners as well as hunters that often have hound dogs or coyote dogs running across their property. We testified in support of that legislation as it would help our conservation agents when they work with these landowners and hunters. Hearing was also held this Wednesday on House Bill 450, which allows an adult not to have a hunting permit when accompanying a youth hunter. I testified that this would create enforcement challenges, would have a fiscal impact to the agency, and then talked about the cost of permit prices in Missouri compared to other states. You look at the combined price of a youth turkey and an adult turkey hunting permit, $25.50 here in Missouri. You look at surrounding states, Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, it might be as high as $80 for that combined price. So we have a fantastic bargain, and I look forward to taking advantage of it this weekend with my two boys. During the hearing, there was a lengthy discussion on non-resident landowner permits. In fact, several legislators were concerned that our permit prices were rather high for non-resident landowners. I informed them that our permit prices compared to other states is relatively low. $190 for a non-resident turkey hunting permit, or $225 for a deer hunting permit when it might be as high as $560 in Iowa or Illinois, and you have to go through a draw. But they did have some concerns about not offering non-resident landowners some sort of discount, and I know the regulation committee is currently working on that. Another opportunity that popped up this week was with Representative Kathy Swan. We're working to amend her bill, House Bill 572. This bill deals with sex offenders. Kind of had an interesting situation last week at the Discovery Center when Sarah and I were there. Some individuals made us aware of a registered sex offender there. Saw that as an opportunity with legislation. We identified the bill. We're now going to amend that bill to where sex offenders would have to be at least 500 feet away from a department-owned or managed nature center. That's just common sense, and I'm hoping that we can see that legislation through the entire process. As we discussed yesterday, unfortunately, it looks like our poaching fine bills are dead for the year. It's really discouraging because there was absolutely no opposition to the bill in the House or the Senate. I think the proactive work that Protection and O&E are doing right now with social media, highlighting our success stories when our agents make great cases, are going to help us out. Really, looking ahead, we have 5 weeks left. We're starting to turn the corner and get into the sprint. We'll have a very busy week next week with budget markup on the Senate side, followed by the next week Senate floor debate on the budget bill, and then finally going to conference. So the General Assembly is really going to be pushing the deadline to finalize the budget before the constitutional requirement of May 5th. Some of the other challenges that still lay out there, captive cervids remains on the Senate calendar. There's been no activity on that legislation on the House side. Legislation related to consolidating our IT department into the Office of Administration. A challenge that's still laying out there, captive cervids remains on the Senate calendar. There's been no activity on that legislation on the House side. Legislation related to consolidating our IT department into the Office of Administration. That legislation really hasn't moved since the hearing. The House Joint Resolution 46, which deals with JCAR, that's the constitutional amendment that we saw a couple of years ago. That's been assigned to a committee. There's potential for a hearing. I do thank Commissioner Murphy for meeting with the Commissioner Chair. I would agree with the comments from commissioners as well as director staff that we go above and beyond any other state agency in gathering input from citizens on regulation development. In fact, we're probably too conservative in some cases, especially when we look at the smallmouth bass regulation, which I think Brian would say it took us 5 or 6 years to finally bring that forward to the commission, but that's the right thing to do to make sure that we get it right. Still a lot of discussion about land acquisition, several bills related to land acquisition related to the department or with the state parks. That legislation we continue to watch. But as I've informed the commission, we have a wonderful story to tell on how conservation areas are working lands, our partnerships with counties, and our PILT program that provides a substantial payment to Missouri counties. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions commissioners might have.
Any questions? Commissioner Byrd?
I just applaud you for getting so many people to testify on almost 10 minutes notice. The late posting of hearings, it's phenomenal, and it's a real tribute to our partners who come at a moment's notice. So whatever we can do to thank them, but also thank staff for doing a yeoman's job of getting people there, because it's really important. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I thank you for going up to the Capitol this coming Tuesday for Conservation Day, and we'll have an opportunity to talk to a lot of its partners.
I think all too often people do not realize that your job is 7 days a week, because in your nights and hearings, your early morning breakfast, and I commend you. We're very fortunate here.
Thanks.
To have you up there.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I echo everything that's been said, especially the comments about the short notice. We've got a viewing audience today. I think it would be nice if the citizens were given ample notice to show up to, put their input into however the legislation moves forward or doesn't. That's certainly the way we approach our regs process with a lot of public input. I would encourage the legislature to try and make that more accessible to citizens to get there, to voice their opinions. And then I just did have a quick question. Is there a price distinction for us between resident, landowner, deer or turkey tag, and non-resident?
In the case of non-residents, it's one flat price. For non-residents, whether you're a non-resident or non-resident landowner, it's the same. We do provide non-resident youth a discount, which the price is the exact same as a resident youth, so $8.50.
And I appreciate that we are a good deal and we are more than fair than our neighboring states, and I appreciate that. I would, as I end up here, continue to encourage the Regs Committee to consider maybe finding a middle there for the non-resident person and then those that are landowners. I wouldn't expect a non-resident landowner to get the same thing as a resident, but maybe we can come up with something there.
I think we'll have a great opportunity to discuss that and potential other regulations and other ideas, like 80th anniversary open house forums. As we're working with staff to develop a strategy, locations, and those key topics that we want to use to bring people in. So whether it's that, or I know moving the gigging season has been a topic of interest for some of our good senators at the Capitol. In fact, that was a question that Dave and I got yesterday from those two senators, so they will continue to ask that question. Thank you.
Great work, thank you. Are there any other items to come before the commission before we adjourn? Anything on your watch for us, Commissioner Bedell?
No, sir.
Blair?
Good, thank you.
Bradford? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?